She's been going to that house her entire life, and yet she acted
welcome all.
surprised when I asked her about it. Remember Jennifer McCabe's answer when I asked her whether there was a door at the garage?
If you hear any audio in the background, it's the final day of the Karen Read retrial.
Actually, there is a garage door right there.
I think she's going to be not guilty.
Alan Jackson, very tight closing.
But that's because that's who's talking right now.
And then we'll get you back into
the defense.
A reminder, if over the weekend, if you feel like you missed some of the Karen Read coverage, no problem. We have you covered.
The defense is talking right now.
Tonight, stream all of it for 5 days, all of the week, all packed into the weekend. Court TV, our website, iOS, Android, wherever you get Court TV. Back after this. Karen Read is in the midst of the retrial of the century.
She is factually innocent. She's guilty.
There's something wrong in this county.
Come at me.
The Karen Read murder retrial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
Look at all these crazy people here.
Stars battle the rain. Then, the current takes on racing. Follow the Angel City in the Courage.
Let me back up some.
It's on.
At Pond Lehocky Giordano, we understand the impact an injury can have on your life. With experienced attorneys across the country, we have recovered billions of dollars for clients, and we know we can do the same for you. No case is too big or too small. We're here to help you and your family get back on track. Tell us your story. It's always free. For any legal needs, give Pond Lehocky a call to get started.
Do you have a box of videotapes, film reels, or photos that aren't degrading? Legacy Box professionally converts them to DVDs, thumb drive, or the cloud. Legacy Box is simple and safe, with over 1 million satisfied customers. Visit legacybox.com.
What is it about Chamberlain University that makes our nursing students so successful? The opportunity to learn from anyone.
Why isn't that going away? Come on, why isn't it going away? I can't even control the mouse. What a crappy world on Roblox. I don't recommend this world. All right, let's go somewhere else. There's nothing here. Let's go to the apartments.
In 15 minutes. The defense goes first in Massachusetts. So we're listening to Alan Jackson deliver his close. We'll pick it up right where we left off.
Let's change the scenario. What if it wasn't the house of a Boston cop? What if it wasn't the house of Brian Albert?
How you doing,
I can
Patrick?
be certain that investigators would have torn that house apart to get answers about why a fellow police officer was laying
Let's go somewhere else.
on the homeowner's lawn. You can betcha. But because this was Brian Albert's house, a Boston cop, nope. And because he was a fellow cop, an insider, they didn't even open the door. That is not justice, folks. That's just pure favoritism. Each of these facts is more than a question mark. They're failures of duty. They're blank spots on a map where justice is supposed to live. And every single one is a reason why you cannot convict Karen Read. Reasonable doubt abounds. If the Commonwealth failed to investigate every reasonable alternative, how dare they come in here and ask you for a verdict? They didn't investigate the case fully, and yet they're asking you to take the easy road and do their job for them. These facts do not represent reasonable doubt. Nothing does. Every one of these facts that you're seeing that we're talking about represents reasonable doubt. Every one. The police and the prosecution are in a position to take people's liberty. It's the most dire and consequential act a civilized government can take against one of its citizens. Their obligation is not just to try to get it right. They have to convince you to the highest degree of certainty known in human affairs. They have to do it all, every bit of it, beyond any and all reasonable doubt. And they have not done that here. And how about the homeowner himself? The host, the first responder, the Boston cop, Brian Albert, who was sparring and practice fighting with Brian Higgins just minutes before John O'Keefe appeared at his house, 34 Fairview. Brian Albert, who was watching Chloe that night, the German Shepherd. Brian Albert, whose phone and his wife's phone were never secured. Brian Albert, who never came out of the house. But that doesn't mean he wasn't awake. It doesn't mean that he wasn't on his phone. Think about this. Jennifer McCabe claimed that her sister and Brian Albert both slept through this complete chaos right outside their bedroom window. But Jennifer McCabe's phone records tell a different story, and they tell the truth. She spoke with them for the better part of a minute, 38 seconds to be
Oh, I died.
detailed about it, at 5:07 a.m. And then she lied about that call. Remember that? What was the reason for that call at 5:07? Was it panic? Was it a warning? We know that conversation took place at the precise time Karen left her house to go search for John, 5:07. We could answer those questions if we just had access to their phones. Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, Michael Proctor wasn't interested in their phones. Not only did he not secure their phones, he never even asked. And what about Brian Albert's dog, Chloe? A dog with a history. A dog that is, quote, not good with strangers. Dr. Russell confirmed John's pattern injuries were from a dog, just like the dog Brian Albert owned. And then Chloe just disappeared. Not there the next morning. None of the officers that you heard from said that there was a dog in the house. They didn't see her. She was just gone. And then ultimately gotten rid of altogether. Who gets rid of their family pet? Unless they had something to hide. Michael Proctor wasn't interested in that either. And recall the group chat with the Alberts and the McCabe's. They were getting their story straight. Matt McCabe, whom the Commonwealth did not call in this trial, instructed the group in that group chat, you'll recall, tell him to say the guy never came in the house. Think about that exact quote. Tell him to say the guy never came in the house. And Brian Albert, the patriarch of the family, exactly, exclamation point. He blessed it. With the truth, as we all know, you don't need to get your story straight. You don't need to tell someone what to say. It's just the truth. And what about the Google search? A Google search that Jennifer McCabe admitted having made. A Google search that was time-stamped by Celebrite at 2:27 a.m. A Google search that read, Hoslong to die in cold. It is uncontested and undisputed that search is deleted. If the 2:27 a.m. timestamp is not true, why does Jennifer McCabe have to lie about it? Why delete it? If the 2:27 a.m. timestamp is not true, why create a false story about Karen screaming Google hypothermia? That's just a fabrication. That's just a made-up fact. And by the way, if someone does tell you Google hypothermia, why would you Google how long it takes to die in cold? Wouldn't you just Google hypothermia? Jennifer McCabe enlisted Carrie Roberts to help shift the blame to Karen. Why go to that much effort unless you're trying to cover for something?
I've been accused.
The entire foundation of her claim that Karen said Google hypothermia is this fantasy about Karen screaming it at the location, at the scene. That's her entire excuse. But that story went completely off the rails when Carrie Roberts admitted that she perjured herself.
I'm hiring an attorney.
Jennifer McCabe's false story. That was a dramatic moment in court. It's an admission of perjury. You don't see that very often in a courtroom. That tells you everything you need to know about the character and quality of the prosecution's case and their witnesses. Live.
Alan Jackson going all in, using Michael Proctor, the lack of investigation to get into basically all of the defense theories. We'll need it right. But first, Matthew Mangino, former prosecutor, criminal defense attorney. He's been in many courtrooms. Your thoughts?
Well, I think it's a very effective closing argument, Ted. He's doing exactly what you need to do. He's creating doubt. He's talking about every witness. He's talking about all of the evidence, and he's focusing on somebody that wasn't there, that no one heard. It's very effective. It's only one side of the story, and many experts will tell you that jurors make a decision about guilt or not guilty long before a closing argument. So this is great theater. The question is, how much of an impact is it having on the jurors? It's good, but we'll see, where it ultimately leads.
Yeah, it could. Both sides will be giving ammunition to jurors that may have made up their minds for the deliberation room. That's, I think, in a case this close, where closing arguments really do come in, helping jurors basically with talking points when you're talking about your side in that deliberation room. Let's get it right. We'll get you back into the courtroom for more of Alan Jackson's closing argument in the case against Karen Read. Outside the courthouse, people have gathered to wait to see what this jury will ultimately decide. Stay with us.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, JL. Good morning, 1. Good morning, 2. Good morning, everybody. I'm listening to the Karen Read last day of trial, closing arguments. She's in the toilet seat. They're on a commercial break. Nice courtroom. Hey, Merchant Pie. Welcome in. We're listening to the Karen Read retrial, closing arguments. It's on commercial break right now. It'll be starting up real soon. I got me a front row seat, right behind the toilet seat.
Karen Read's retrial. Let's head back into the courtroom. Defense counsel Alan Jackson at the podium.
A fundamental tenet of any investigation is to ensure that witnesses are independent and not influenced by other witnesses. You start by separating the witnesses. Michael Proctor did none of that in this case, and we see the results. Think back to Jennifer McCabe's own text messages with Kerry Roberts. About Kerry Roberts, not with Kerry Roberts, notably. What Kerry Roberts didn't know was at the time she was being interviewed by the police, Jennifer McCabe was in real time. She was bragging about having influenced Kerry's testimony or her statements to the Alberts and the McCabes. Quote, she's telling them everything, all the stuff. Remember that timeline we talked about with Jennifer McCabe? That's what she was referring to. She's telling him everything that Jennifer McCabe had put in Karen's timeline. The Commonwealth wants you to believe that Karen Read made a statement at the location, at the scene. I hit him. I'm sure you'll hear that from the prosecution in their final arguments. But their own witnesses contradict that. Jennifer McCabe admitted on cross-examination that her very first statement to law enforcement, confirmed that Karen didn't say anything. She asked, could I have hit him? Did I hit him? Is he dead? The physics and the science answer that question. Could you have hit him? No. Sergeant Buchanan also testified that the only statements Karen Read made at the scene, according to his conversations with the first responders, was, could I have hit him? Did I hit him? It wasn't a confession. It was confusion. And Dr. Russell explained that confusion. She told you why Karen Reed or anybody in that position might ask those questions. She was suffering from extreme grief reaction, which according to the evidence can last for years. Even her medical records confirm that diagnosis. It's common to ask those questions in grief. It's common to ask those types of questions in shock. You're trying to make sense out of the nonsensical in the moment. And the Commonwealth has tried to twist those words into a confession. There is no evidence that any officer at the scene ever heard Karen Reed say, I hit him. Not a single police officer at the scene came in to support the Commonwealth's claim. It's not on video, it's not on audio, it's not in a single police report, it's not in a single EMT or EMS report. Nowhere. The fact is, Karen never said, I hit him. You saw the video. Multiple officers were right there. She simply never said it. What did Jennifer McCabe do and not do when she got to 34 Fairview? She would have you believe, I want to set the scene for you, that she's confronted out of the blue with John O'Keefe's lifeless body. Her friend, John O'Keefe. He's bruised and battered, he's bleeding, his eyelid is cut, his nose is bleeding. Karen is screaming at the top of her lungs. Carrie is screaming back to Karen, shut up! Both women begin crying. Both women are giving CPR. There's chaos everywhere. It's building in the yard, just feet from Brian Albert's house. Brian Albert's window. Jennifer calls her sister at 6:07. With all this chaos going on, no answer. Jennifer calls her sister at 6:08. With all this chaos and bedlam going on, still no answer. No lights come on in the house. In the midst of all this screaming and this chaos, Brian Albert doesn't come outside. Nicole Albert doesn't come outside during this maelstrom. And yet, Jennifer McCabe never goes inside to check on her sister. There's literally no signs of life inside the house. And Jennifer McCabe doesn't take a step inside that house to check on her family. Why is that? Does that make any sense? Anyone, everyone would sprint inside the house to make sure that there's no one in there that was hurt or injured or, God forbid, dead. Everyone would do that. But not Jennifer McCabe. The only way that makes sense is if Jennifer McCabe already knew that Brian and Nicole were just fine. That's the only reasonable explanation. And the only way she would know that they were fine is if she knew what happened. But Michael Proctor never explored this incredibly suspicious behavior. Don't you have questions? This would give anyone reasonable doubt. And don't you have questions also about Brian Higgins? Michael Proctor certainly didn't. Higgins had been sending flirtatious and romantic texts to John's girlfriend, Karen Reed. You'll remember I asked Sergeant Buchanan a simple question. Were those texts flirtatious in nature? He refused to answer that simple question. Do you remember that? I'm not comfortable putting up with that, end quote. We read the texts. It's not a secret. Of course they were flirtatious. Of course they were romantic in nature. The reason he refused to answer that simple question is telling. It's because these flirtatious texts establish a motive for Brian Higgins. Sergeant Buchanan could not bring himself to tell the truth. His bias was on full display. He was covering for another cop. Investigators also ignored Higgins' suspicious late-night visit to the Canton Police Department. That was after a night of drinking, by the way. Why didn't they investigate this? What was so important that Higgins needed to go to the police station at that time, 1:30 in the morning, while drunk, by the way? Why weren't they interested in those facts? Remember, he's an ATF agent. He's a cop, a member of the Blue Wall, best friends with Brian Albert.
Hi, JL.
He would know that the CPD would be the first to get the call when someone reported John missing or injured.
Can you hear the
He would know
TV?
what to look for, what to listen for, to determine if the report had been made. and when and what the response was going to be. You saw the skulking through the hallways with his hood up, moving bags between cars, and of course, that late night mysterious phone call on his cell phone, a phone that you don't have and that you'll never see. All of that, and Michael Proctor never gave him a second look. All of that, and the Commonwealth, who's supposed to be after the truth, didn't call him to the stand. If you have any unanswered questions about Brian Higgins, that's reasonable doubt. The police didn't interview Brian Higgins on January 2022, but he was at the police station, as we've just seen. You heard evidence that Higgins and Chief of Police Kenny Berkowitz, also good friends, were in the Sallyport together with the SUV for a, quote, wildly long time. Kelly Dever, another Boston cop, told you that. She also told law enforcement agents that she found it, quote, weird that Higgins could have access to that very sensitive evidence, the SUV.
Alan Jackson delivering his closing argument to this jury, who will soon have the fate of Karen Reed in their hands.
Okay, we're in commercial break right now on Karen Reed murder retrial, closing arguments. Her attorneys are talking right now. They talk first. I think they did enough to get her off. I do, but that's until I hear the prosecution, and then I might change my mind. But right now, he's talking. So whoever's talking, I like what they're saying. They sound good. Got a pliable story. Certainly reasonable doubt. Considering you got somebody on the accused chair that could face life in prison. They'll be coming back on here any minute now. See if I can straighten you up a little bit. How's that? Commercial break. There's a commercial break. Let's go outside for a second. Well, I gotta cut through here. Don't worry, you ain't missing nothing.
There is never a situation in which a witness, a potential suspect even, should be given access to the evidence in a case. If that's exactly what happened here, Higgins was given unfettered access to that SUV and its taillight nearly immediately, according to Kate Devers' statement to law enforcement. And it was at that exact time, the exact moment, that Higgins would be at that Sallyport, that the 42 minutes of the Sallyport video is just missing. Gone. Vanished. Well, that's convenient. Now put in context the condition of that taillight when it was actually seized in Dighton. It was cracked, but not completely damaged. I ask you to compare and contrast Officer Kelly Dever, her attitude, her demeanor. That's all for you to judge. Her attitude, her demeanor, her truthfulness, her witness stand. Compare and contrast that to Sergeant Nick Barrows. Who's more believable? Officer Barrows is unattached to any of the players in this grand play directed by Michael Proctor. He's truly independent. I tell you, was the taillight, he was asked, was the taillight in this condition when Michael Proctor at 412? His answer? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It was cracked, but not completely damaged, not smashed out like that. So how did the taillight get cracked? How did it end up in the condition where it was cracked, as Officer Barrows saw it, but not completely damaged? Well, you don't have to guess. There's a video. Just watch. That's how it got cracked. And Judson Welcher's recreation confirms it. Look at the contact. That's from the Commonwealth's expert. And that further is confirmed by the fact that there were no taillight pieces found in any of the initial searches conducted at the scene. 2 searches, 50-foot area searched. Not a single fragment was found until after Michael Proctor had access to and control of that SUV and its taillight. What does that say about the character and quality of this case? It's revealing what happened here at trial. One of the most dramatic moments probably of the trial, Kelly Dever.
Hi, Mike Gray.
How can you trust this investigation when you saw how far a police officer will go? You had a front row seat to the power of police manipulation and police corruption. A front row seat. Dever was interviewed by a separate law enforcement agency, not a friendly department, not Boston Police Department, not Michael Proctor's MSP, a different independent agency. She told those law enforcement agents in a formal interview that she saw Brian Higgins and Chief Kenneth Berkowitz alone in the Sallyport with the SUV. She was detailed, she was clear, she was unequivocal, she remembered the specifics, she recalled how it made her feel, quote, weird. She recalled that how long Higgins spent, a quote, wildly long time, as she described. These are all incredible details to tell law enforcement. She couldn't have been clearer. She couldn't have been more specific. But then she's put on a witness list and she's subpoenaed by the defense. Oh boy. Then this rookie cop was called up to the police commissioner's office. The same commissioner that was the boss of Brian Albert. They have a meeting, a private meeting, and he says, wink, wink, nod, nod, we support you, Officer Dever. What else was said in that meeting? What else is reasonable to believe was said in that meeting? She claimed she couldn't remember. She claimed not to remember if he instructed her to do the right thing. But the commissioner of the Boston Police Department certainly said something to this rookie cop, and all of a sudden, that detailed, unambiguous, unequivocal statement to law enforcement became, what did she say? A false memory. Not I didn't say it. She admitted she said it. She admitted she detailed the entire story. She just said, it's a false memory. What? So she's called to the commissioner's office to make sure that she would do the right thing. That's why she was called. And now we know what that means. In her words, my entire career depends on what I say here on the stand. I'll quote that again. Quote, my entire career depends on what I say here on the stand. You bet it does. That's how it works. And that's how we got here. At the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, can you trust the Commonwealth's case? Can you trust their witnesses? Can you trust their evidence? And here are a few of the highlights. A video that was played in a courtroom and sold as accurate, turns out was completely inverted, flipped backward, completely false. The test that formed the basis of their entire theory of the case. Watch closely as Dr. Welcher stands as a surrogate. Is that a righteous test? Or is that a manipulation? Dr. Welcher tried to deceive and fool you by leaning into the car, manipulating the results of his own test. When the truth was revealed by Dr. Rentschler, the Commonwealth spent the next hour cross-examining him about how that test was meaningless. It actually didn't mean anything. Well, that's convenient now that we realize that it was a manipulated test, and it actually does mean nothing. It didn't represent the theory of the Commonwealth's case. That's what was suggested. If that test does not represent the theory of the Commonwealth's case, really, then why was Dr. Welcher playing dress-up in John O'Keefe's clothes, or identical clothes to John O'Keefe, when he was holding a glass? Why was he holding the glass right behind the vehicle? And why was he standing with his right arm oriented to the right rear taillight if he wasn't trying to recreate the circumstance that is the Commonwealth's entire theory? The Commonwealth stood up here with a straight face and told you they weren't trying to suggest that that's how John was hit by the car. Of course they were trying to suggest that's their theory of the case. They only abandoned it 2 days ago when it was revealed by our experts that it's physically impossible. That silent witness, that science, that physics has become very pesky to the Commonwealth because there was no collision. Dr. Wilson.
We're going to get a break. When we come back, the remainder of Alan Jackson's close.
It's shameful. We are after the truth in this courtroom. You're entitled to it. Demand it. Why would the Commonwealth stoop to a stunt like that? It's desperation. They know what you now know, what their experts know. There was no collision. So now we've reached the final moments of the trial, and you've seen the facts and you've seen the evidence, and we've just talked about dozens and dozens and dozens of facts that are reasonable doubt. Each one of them are reasonable doubts. These facts, these note cards that you're looking at piled high, one on top of another, literally stacks and stacks of them covering the table. As you mentally sift through those cards, realize we want a massive hole in the Commonwealth's case. Every single one of the note cards represents a hole in the Commonwealth's case. If you're holding mentally even one of those cards, you're holding reasonable doubt, folks. You're holding a not guilty verdict. Reasonable doubt is not a sliding scale. It's a wall. If the Commonwealth cannot get over every one of these dozens of walls, you have to acquit Karen Read. The truth is, Karen Read is not guilty. Not because of technicalities, but because the facts, the law, the science, the physics, the data, they all say so. They demand it. The Commonwealth does not have a theory about how John was hit by the car. They haven't even shown you that it's possible that he was hit by a car. And the reason they haven't is because it's not possible that he was hit by a car. There was no collision. Your job is not to do their job, their burden, entirely. It's theirs. They have to prove this case and their theory beyond all reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. And not only do they not have a theory, they can't prove one that doesn't exist. All you need to know is that the Commonwealth failed. They failed to provide you with a truthful representation. They failed to prove the essence of their case, that John was even hit by a car to begin with. They failed to prove any intent on the part of Karen Read because she has. They failed to investigate the actual suspects in this case. They failed to present the lead investigator to you. They failed to justify the perjured testimony that you heard discussed in this case. They failed to hold accountable an officer who came in here and lied to you and claimed false memories so she could do the right thing to cover for a fellow cop or cops. They failed to maintain a fair and unbiased and honest investigation. They failed to present you with the truth. And this is what an investigation that's riddled with errors and omissions and a rush to judgment and conflicted and corrupted from the start. Every part of it. That is the literal definition of reasonable doubt. How can they ask you to be morally certain based on this evidence? It's a tragedy. When the government fails so completely, so catastrophically, when there are dozens and dozens of points of reasonable doubt on the table, your duty, your oath is clear. Your sworn obligation under the law is to acquit Karen Read. Not just because you can, because you must. Justice demands it. Do not let the Commonwealth get away with this. Don't let them get away with this. Do not endorse and sanction an investigation that is broken and corrupted top to bottom. But just as importantly, do not let Michael Proctor get away with it. And make no mistake about it, folks. If you convict Karen Read of anything, if you convict her of anything, science, the physics, the data, they lose. But tragically, Michael Proctor wins. Remember his texts. Something stinks. But serious charges will be brought on the girl. Say to yourself, this is justice. The fact is there was no collision. A car did not kill John O'Keefe. So I ask you, let your voice be heard, not in whispers, but in truth. Let the community feel, through your verdict, that justice cannot be bent and that it will not be buried. Find Karen Reed, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. Thank you.
All right, Alan Jackson.
Oh, there you have it. Defense is over. Look, I got a second birthday song here. I'm going to listen to it. Let's back it up. Might be a little louder than normal. Here we go. Oh, hang on. It's not louder at all, is it?
Candles lit, shadows dance on the cake. Mike Gray's day, let the whole world shake. From the lows to the highs, you paved your way. Celebrate the legend, it's your birthday. Mike Gray, we here to toast your name. Through the joy and the pain, you stayed the same. Blow the candles, let the smoke convey. Another year stronger, happy birthday. Gray skies clear when you came around. Roots deep, now you run this town. Through the grind and the climb, you found sound. This your day, king, let the cheers rebound. Hands up high, let the love pour down. A birthday crown, you earn that now. Trap beats bump while the candles fade. Raise a glass for Mike, it's a whole parade. Mike Gray, we here to toast your name. Through the joy and the pain, you stayed the same. Blow the candles, let the smoke convey. Another year stronger, happy birthday. This ain't just a day, it's a whole life flex. Mike Gray, you're the GOAT, no need for checks. We vibing loud, no tears, no gray. Just smiles and cheers for your birthday. Mike Gray, we here to toast your name. Through the joy and the pain, you stayed the same. The candles let the smoke convey. Another year stronger, happy birthday. Another year stronger, happy birthday. This ain't just a day, it's a whole life flex. Mike Gray, you're the GOAT, no need for checks. We vibing loud, no tears, no gray. Just smiles and cheers for your birthday.